This is Tara Wallace, and I am here at the YWCA representing the Advocacy Committee. And today we're here with Angel Romero with the United Way. And Angel is going to talk about advocacy and elections. We've got an election coming up on November 8th.
We do.
We're excited about that.
Yeah.
So, Angel, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do in the community, and how to be civically engaged, because you do a lot of that.
I do, yeah. I try to keep myself busy in different ways. I'm not a native Topekan. I kind of grew up all over the place, was a military brat, and kind of ended up in Topeka when all was said and done. Ended up in Kansas, I should say, and went to high school in Junction City, not too far from here, and then came to Topeka for Washburn for college, and then kind of the rest was history after that. Kind of fell in love with the community when I attended Washburn and thought, this is the place I want to stay and where I want to kind of put down roots and that sort of thing. And I've always found it a very welcoming community and a community that wanted the voices of young people to be heard. And that was, I think, what really kind of energized me and excited me was this was a community I felt like I actually could make some kind of difference and be involved in the civic life of the community and that sort of thing. And so that was really exciting for me. And I've had lots of opportunities to do that in lots of different ways.
So you are really, really passionate to not be a native Topekan. You are really, really engaged. I did not know that. I know a lot about you, but I did not know you're not a native Topekan. So I got a fun question for you.
Yeah.
So what was the first election that you voted in? So you don't have to tell us who you voted
Sure.
for. But what do you remember about that experience?
Yes, I'm the biggest nerd. I totally remember everything about my first voting experience. It was 2006. It was the primary in 2006. I just turned 18, so I was super excited to go out and vote. And it was so funny. I was all excited. I remember the first thing I remember actually was I wore a shirt for a candidate. And then this is, of course, before I knew all the rules. And so the first thing that happened was I got to the polling place and they told me, all right, you got to go out and change your shirt and then come back in. And I remember I thought I was going to get arrested that day when the lady talked to me. She was like, "You're fine. You just need to change your shirt." I was like, "Okay," and came back. But it's funny. I remember going in. And I remember how excited I was to actually go in and cast my vote. And I saved my I voted sticker for a long time after that. It's my very first I voted sticker ever. When I say I'm a nerd, it goes pretty deep.
Do you still have that sticker?
I probably do somewhere in my files at home. I'm sure I probably do.
I bet you do. So what are some of your favorite resources to learn about the issues and the individuals? What do you do? How do you keep yourself informed?
Yeah, that's a great thing about technology these days. There's so many different resources. Honestly, one of the ones I use a lot is Twitter. There's a lot of information, lots of ways you can get on Twitter. But the nice thing about Twitter, especially for politics or for advocacy type issues and things like that, is there's a lot of really great folks who use Twitter, organizations that use Twitter to get information out there. News sources use Twitter really well, and Twitter sometimes lets you get things right from the source too. So you've got elected officials who are on Twitter who are, in their own words, tweeting out things about their positions on things or things like that. When the legislature is in session, I love following that KSLedge hashtag because sometimes you get the real nitty gritty on things happening in the legislature, especially when things start moving so fast. That's really helpful to be able to use that. My other new favorite resource too is actually the Kansas Reflector. KansasReflector.com, online newspaper, completely free for folks to use, and it's great because they do really kind of in-depth political reporting that some other places don't get to do, and it's all free for people as well to access. And so they do a great job of finding really interesting things to cover and really doing some kind of deep dives into different topics and things like that. So I think that was a really great resource.
So all free resources.
Absolutely,
that you can use to stay engaged. Yeah. I like that. So you have been involved in getting Topeka's young professionals engaged in the political process and civically engaged. So what is your message to this demographic about this election in particular? What would you encourage them to do?
Gosh, yeah, I think that the big thing to remember is that, when we look at if you just look at flat out numbers. If you looked at both millennials and Gen Z, the portion of Gen Z that's eligible to vote, just in sheer numbers, that population is actually a bigger population than the boomer populations and some of those older populations. So just by sheer numbers, I think those folks under the age of 40 should really know that they have a lot of power as a voting bloc, and to not underestimate that power. And it's also a really diverse voting bloc too. Millennials and Gen Z, just as a generation, are much more diverse than older generations. And so when I think about, what would it look like if those blocks came out to vote, I think our elections would look a little different. It would be really interesting to see those results. I also tell people too, the stakes are it's kind of sounds, I think, kind of trite sometimes to say that the stakes are really high in this election, but the stakes are really high in this election. There's a lot of different things that are at stake in this upcoming election, and so it's incredibly crucial for young people to get out and make their voices heard, especially because some of these issues speak directly to the issues that are impacting young people. When we look at things like student debt, for instance, so of course that's been in discussion by both sides, and that's a big political topic right now. We look at things like women's health care, access to abortion, those kinds of things. Those are all issues that impact everyone, but especially young families and young individuals as well. And so there's never been, I think, a more important election than this one that we're in right now.
So the last cafecito that we did was with Judge Beyer, and she talked about the importance of learning about the individuals that are up for election. Mm-hmm. A lot of people say, my vote won't matter, it doesn't count. What would you say to the individuals who would come at you with that message?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's easy to say that, but I think we've seen actually a lot of instances, even in these recent years, where one vote, two votes really do make a difference. There's been a lot of elections, some city council elections, but even some state legislature elections, where at the end of the day, it's come down to a handful of votes have decided that election. Even the state treasurer's primary race this year, which is not a race you would think of as the most heated race in the world, hundreds of thousands of people voted in that race, and I think the ending margin was somewhere around 2,000 some votes decided that election. And of 300,000, 400,000 people voting, to only come down to that few really shows you just how powerful one individual's vote is in an election.
So you're telling the people in your generation, get out and vote.
Absolutely.
If you haven't registered, get out there and take care of that as well. So where would they go to do that?
Yeah, so one of the easiest places to go is ksvotes.org. Mm-hmm. So it's a real easy website that can go right on there and register or update your information. Sometimes people forget, if you have changed names, if you've moved, if you've done something that impacts your status, you need to update that registration as well so that everything's all current when you go out to vote.
So they can go online and check. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what is one thing you would tell voters before they head to the ballot box on November the 8th? It's not November 1st, it's November 8th. What would you tell them?
Absolutely. Well, again, like we mentioned earlier, there is a lot at stake in this election. The one thing I would remind people too, especially because we have so many legislative seats on the ballot this year, we also have constitutional amendment questions that pertain to things happening in this state. Those local elections, those policymakers here in the state, I think are more important than ever. One of the trends we've seen in the national government is to send issues back to the states for consideration. Right. That's what happened in the case that decided Roe versus Wade. The court said that states need to be the ones to decide those issues, and I can see more of that happening. And so state legislatures are really becoming a critical place for people to make a difference, because those legislatures are being asked to weigh in on an increasingly important number of issues. And so who's elected at your state legislature level, but even your county commissioner level, those folks are really important nowadays, probably more important than they've been before. And so it's really critical for folks to have a say in who those people are.
So remind us again, where would individuals go to learn about the people that are being put forward in those local elections? Where can they find out more information about who these individuals are and how they voted previously?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple great resources out there. One of them is vote411.org, which is actually a partnership through the National League of Women Voters. And it's really great because you can actually enter in your location on there, and it'll take you to a direct profile for you that shows you your candidates, your races, and so you can click. And for those folks who have responded, and that's always a trick, right? People have to respond to the candidate profiles on there. But for all the candidates who have given responses, it organizes all their responses in a real easy easy to find way on there. And encourage folks also, of course, to check on the media. Usually the Topeka Capital Journal will do a voter guide in advance of the election. The Kansas Reflector I mentioned earlier is another great place to find some statewide candidate information, that sort of thing. They do a really good job of compiling that information as well.
Perfect.